Welcome to aminacademy.com. Let us do the tragic life stories of scientists. In that, we discuss about Marie Curie. In 1906, Marie's life was struck by tragedy when Pierre was killed in a street accident after being knocked down by the horse and cart. Her indomitable spirit, however, kept her working and she went on succeed him in his chair as professor at the Sorbonne, as well as carrying on lecturing where he had left off. Her determination and remarkable endeavors led to a second Nobel Prize in 1911, this time in chemistry for creating a means of measuring radioactivity. Not long after, Sorbonne built the first Radium Institute with two laboratories, one of study of radioactivity under Marie Curie's directions, and the other for biological research into the treatment of cancer. During the First World War, Marie Curie worked to develop small mobile X-ray units that could be used to diagnose injuries near the battlefront. As director of the Red Cross Radiological Service, she toured Paris asking for money and supply and vehicles which could be converted. In October 1914, the first machine known as Petit's Curies were ready, and Mary set off to the front. She worked with her daughter Irene, then aged 17, at casualty clearing stations close to the front line, X-raying wounded men to locate the fracture, bullets, and shrapnel. The technology Marie Curie developed for the Petit's Curies is similar to that used today in the fluoroscopy machines at our Hampstead Hospice. After the war, Mary continued her work as a researcher, teacher, and head of a laboratory and received many awards and prizes. Among them were the Ellen Richards Research Prize, is most important. Now, let us discuss further about the tragic life story of scientist Marie Curie, and he also succeeded in her life. His quotes, her quotes, among her writing, Curie left behind this thought: nothing in life is to be feared, it is only to be understood. Now is the time to understand more so that we may fear less. Marie Curie's life was marked by tragedy, including the death of her husband, Pierre, and her own battle with radiation sickness. Death of her husband was. In 1906, Pierre was killed in a street accident when he was hit by a horse-drawn cart. Mary was devastated by his death and continued to write love letters to him among long after his passing. Radiation sickness. Mary and her husband were both constantly ill from radiation sickness. Mary died from the aplastic anemia in 1934 at the age of 66, likely caused by radiation exposure. Some of her books and papers are still so radioactive that they are stored in lead box. Other tragedies in Mary's life included her rejection by the French Academy of Sciences and her public exposure and vilification over her affair with the physicist Paul Langevin. Mary suffered from severe depression and acute kidney problems. She spent most of January 1912 in a private clinic registered under an assumed name. Despite these tragedies, Marie Curie's indomitable spirit kept her working. She went on to succeed her husband as a professor at the Sorbonne and carried on lecturing where he had left off. She also isolated radium metal, published comprehensive textbook on radioactivity, and secured the right to define an international standard for radium emission. The sudden death of Pierre Curie, April 1906, was a bitter blow to Marie Curie, but it was also a decisive turning point in her career. Henceforth, she was to devote all her energy to completing alone the scientific work that they had undertaken. In May 13, 1906, she was appointed to the professorship that had been left vacant on her husband's death. She was the first woman to teach in the Sorbonne. In 1908, she became a titular professor, and 1910, her fundamental treatise on radioactivity was published. In 1911, she was awarded the Nobel Prize for Chemistry for the isolation of pure radium. In 1914, she saw the completion of the building of the laboratories of the Radium Institute at the University of Paris. Marie Curie driving a mobile radiological unit. In 1914, Marie Curie driving a Renault automobile converted into a mobile radiological unit. In 1914, Curie used these vehicles, which became known as Petits Curies, to bring X-ray equipment to wounded soldiers at the front during World War I. Throughout World War I, Marie Curie, with the help of her daughter Irene, devoted herself to the development of the use of X radiography. In 1918, the Radium Institute, the staff of which Irene had joined, began to operate in earnest, and it was to become a universal center for nuclear physics and chemistry. Marie Curie, now at the highest point of her fame, and from 1922, a member of the Academy of Medicine, devoted her researches to the study of the chemistry and radioactivity substances and the medical application of these substances. Death of Marie Curie. On 14 July 1934, at the Sancellemoz Sanatorium in Passy, France, at the age of 66, Marie Curie died. The cause of her death was given as aplastic pernicious anemia, a condition she developed after her of exposure to radiation through her work. That the complete family of Marie Curie also devoted their life in radiological research. Among her writing, Curie left behind his thought: nothing in life is to be feared, it is only to be understood. Now is the time to understand more so that we may fear less. So far, we discussed about a tragic life of Marie Curie and her working in different way for people's good life. If you have done, please subscribe our YouTube channel.